So, guys, welcome to the 16th monthly meeting of the UK MTB Trail Alliance. So, unfortunately, Ali Campbell has had a family emergency and won't be able to join us this evening, but fear not. In a moment, I'll hand over to Bob Campbell, Ali's husband and partner, who's the other half of Campbell Coaching, who, as well as working for who also works for NRW, and he'll lead our workshop discussion to explore trail maintenance training needs of trail associations, formal trail groups, and bike parks. So this is the first time we've attempted a workshop format, so we're going to do things a little differently. So during the discussion, we're going to forgo the normal hands-up approach we use for Q&As. And what we're going to do is, if you've got a question to ask, a point to make, or something relevant you'd like to discuss, then please just use the natural breaks in conversation to do so, and just start talking, as if you would if we were all in the room together. Obviously, this means we'll all need to leave our video on during the call so we can all see each other. And now I'm going to ask you all, because we're doing this differently, to each of you in turn to introduce yourselves. So please tell us your name, the group or organisation you're part of, but also tell us a bit about your trail building and trail maintenance experience. So, for example, if you're a dig leader, how many digs a year you lead and how many years you've been doing it for. And in particular, please let us know if you've done any formal trail maintenance or trail building training. So I'm just going to randomly pick on people based on the order they appear in my list. So Andy, actually, you're first. Go ahead.
Hello, Andrew Davies from Dean Trail Volunteers. I've been digging since COVID, I guess. Just started as the 6 people came back in. I'm a dig lead and a dig coordinator, so I sort of organise all the digs. I unfortunately haven't had any formal training. Everyone had formal training just before I joined, and then they left. Just sad tale. It was too good. The training was too good.
All right, cool. Jez, you're next.
Oh, hi. I'm Jez Sainter from SingletrAction. I've been a digger for over 15 years. So long I can't remember exactly when I started, although I was known as Mr. Once a Year for about the first 3 years. And then now I'm chairman of Singletraction. I'm lead dig at Stainburn and sort of joint lead dig at Dolby and at Wetherby. And as such, actually, I've never had any formal training, if I think about it. Although that is about to change, because I've been invited to be trained on train inspection while riding a bike, which sounds like fun, in May. I think because of Storm Dara, they realised that they didn't have enough trail inspectors within the Forest Commission in the area. So I will be getting some formal training. But then again, I did build trails for 10 years with Clicksby's. So you could say I've got a little bit of experience.
Well, yeah, we'll come on to proving competency without training later in the discussion. Hannah, you're next on my list.
Hiya, yeah, Hannah from Burlish Bike Park. I have had formal training with Bob and Ali previously. Obviously, we set out the park. But I've become a bit of a pen pusher since then. And now it's Kieran who does most of the grafting with his son Felix. I think Kieran's in here as well. But yeah, definitely recommend getting the training from Ali and Bob. And my biggest regret with the bike park is not getting Kieran on the course as well.
Cool, thanks, Hannah. Who's next on my list? Tony, you're next on my list.
Hello, Tony from 6770, coaching and guiding. I've had no formal training and I haven't done any digging. Shame, shame, shame.
Actually, sure, it's no shame. You're here. That's the important thing.
But I would say I gave Andy 3 pairs of 510s to help the trail building at DTV.
Oh, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
And then also, I suppose on Tony's behalf, Tony's well, you're based down near Brighton, aren't you? But you spend a lot of time in the Surrey Hills, and actually, there's a whole set of people that have been trained up in the Surrey Hills on an ATB course, but none of them have had a chance to do any official digging because Forestry England haven't recognised the qualification. So, it's a geographical thing as well as an effort thing. But again, we'll come on to that later in the conversation. David, Lee and Cragg, you're next on my list. Oh, you're on mute.
There we go. Is that better?
Yeah.
David from Lee and Cragg Volunteers. Not any formal training. We've had a little bit of maintenance training that I think basically there weren't a great deal of practical in it. It was more about building regs and all that kind of thing, really. It wasn't really much about the maintenance of the place. It was more about the ins and outs of building codes and goodness knows what, health and safety, basically. I've been doing it probably about 9 months. Not a trail builder, just started off as somebody wanting to look after our local trails. And it's progressed and snowballed from there. Now we've got a volunteer group that I run. And we've got a lot of interest from, our landowner, which is Lancashire County Council, and our other local council, which is Rosendale Council. So we're doing okay at the minute.
Cool, thanks, David. So I got to grass you up a little bit, but obviously the course that you did was an ATB course delivered by Clive. So it was actually it wasn't actually a trail maintenance coordinator course, was it? It was the basic course, wasn't it? It was just a trail maintenance course. That was the title of it, wasn't it? From memory,
it was trail maintenance course, which when it actually came out, it was just basically a health and safety course. Which for me being a practical person and wanting to get stuck in, it did have its value, but it didn't sit particularly well with me because I'm hands-on. I want to get stuck in. I'm more of a practical person.
Fair enough. Cool. And we'll hopefully have a chance to discuss some of that later on. Everyone keeps moving around on my list, but I'll ask people if I've missed anyone at the end. But Hannah from Singletrack, you're next on my list currently.
Yeah, I'm Hannah from Singletrack. So I'm a journalist, not a digger. I'm just here to keep track of what all the issues are, so that I know what's going on in the community and can write about it if I need to. So I'm not a digger really.
Again, no need to apologise at all, and it's great that you're here. So Kieran, you're next on my list, I think.
Hi, I'm at Burlish Bike Park. I sort of look after the trails there, no formal training. As Hannah said, she didn't get me on it, but I sort of, me and my son Felix kind of look after all the trails between us. We have the odd volunteer dig days, but the day-to-day maintenance is just the two of us.
Cool. And how long have you been doing that for?
Since it opened, so July year before last, 18 months.
Cool. And do you have any experience before that, or did you?
I didn't. Felix did. He was digging up there in the with his mates in the dirt and that sort of stuff, but at a pretty good standard. I didn't really, but I've got experience with machines and digging in general.
Cool. All right, cool. Thank you. Martin, you're next on my list.
Hello. Sorry, I joined a bit late. I help with Ride Bristol. And I've not had a huge amount of training. I was in Bob's course that he did at the reframing MTB thing the other weekend, and I had some health and safety training from Bristol Council. And that's about it, really.
And how long have you been... You're a dig lead, right, for Ride Bristol?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. I've been doing it for a few years. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly, but a few years.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Rob, doesn't say any more than Rob on my list, but Rob, whoever you are.
Sorry, I heard Rob. Do you mean Rod?
No, there is a Rob. There's a separate Rob to you, Roddy.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. There's Rob.
Yeah.
Hi, Rob.
Hiya.
You're a volunteer at Afan, right? Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you just sort of help out on dig days, do you?
Yeah. I'm a rider as well. He used to be a racer. He used to race on the National Series.
Cool. And you do you go to all of the dig days that
I do attend to help with the Avon Valley volunteers down in Avon.
Okay.
So I've been doing that for a long time, since that Avon was opened back in sometime early mid-90s, and that's a long time.
Yeah, that is a long time. You put a lot of work into the trails.
On the Benny Heave as well.
It's a lot of work you put into the trails. It's very much appreciated. All right, cool. Roddy, go on. You go next.
Yeah. Cheers, sorry about that. So Roddy Hamilton, Ochil Trail Association, done some bits and bobs of digging. We've actually got a dim bins dig leader course coming up in April. So yeah, really looking forward to that. That's it from us.
Cool, thanks, Roddy. Zoe, you're next on my list. You probably didn't hear the intro, but just say who you are, where you're from, and all of your vast trail building experience. She may not even be listening. Knowing her, she's probably dealing with putting her kids to bed while on the call at the same time. Zoe? She's not listening. Have I missed anyone else other than Zoe?
Yes, Robin.
Tony,
Tony.
You go. My list just keeps moving around like the foot I did.
No worries. I'm Tony Skirrow from Ride Northampton. We look after, at the moment, the Northampton Bike Park. Two of us have had formal training with Bob and Ali at Burlish, actually, when the one Hannah organised. So we're both trail maintenance coordinators and trail inspectors, and various other bits of training on machinery, ad hoc here and there through other sources. Nothing official, no official tickets. Probably been scraping trails in for 20 odd years, but only packing down berms and jumps in the last 3, I suppose.
Cool, thank you, Tony. I was trying to say these things. Sorry, here, just juggling bedtime as I predicted. Well, just introduce Zoe. Is a rider in Surrey Hills who volunteers for Girls Alive, which is a charity, a women's charity trying to get women doing physical activity. So she leads all of their mountain bike rides. I'm not sure if she's done any digging or not, but I think we can probably assume not much, and certainly hasn't led organised digs, I don't think. Cool. Well, look, I'll hand over to Bob, who can introduce himself before he starts talking. And I'm just going to let Andy, can you just let Keith in, and we'll get him to introduce himself before we start. There you go. Hey, Keith. You've arrived just at the time we've just finished all introducing ourselves, so you're going to have to go in and say hi to us all. So just tell us who you are, what group or organisation you're from, and any trail building or trail maintenance experience you have, and especially if you've done any formal trail maintenance or trail building training. Or perhaps you didn't want to be put on the spot. Keith, did you hear that?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I'll say it again. So we're just all introducing ourselves. You arrived just when we finished all introducing ourselves. So I'm picking on you, Cole. Just say who you are, what group or organisation you're from, and also, most importantly, if you've got any trail maintenance or trail building experience. If so, how much? And if you've had any formal trail maintenance or trail building training.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Robin. Yeah, I'm Keith Tokeley. I had a bit of trail building experience way back. Maybe some of you from the southeast of England will remember Redlands Trails from a long time ago. I was part of the trail crew on occasions that built some of the trails like Summer Lightning. Yeah, that was 25 years ago. I'm now in my late 40s. Moved up to the edge of Hampsley Forest, and so do some trail maintenance with James Dodds and Alex Talks and others from Hampsley. But I'm here today because I'm getting involved with the proposed Richmond bike park in Richmond, North Yorkshire. So yeah, along with Louise Rain, who I know has joined some of these before. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. I know Ben Tudor reasonably well, actually, Keith. But I'm sure you'll remember from those days. And also Henry Norman from Ride Sheffield was also part of Redlands Trails back in the day. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I actually sold my son's last bike that he had to Henry. So we met up at just outside of Sheffield, and I know he's was there when that all started.
Well, cool. Well, that's good to know. Thank you. Cool. Have I missed anyone? Has anyone else not introduced themselves? I think you all have now. So I'll just hand over to Bob in a second, and he can introduce himself. But if you haven't already, just change your screen name so it says your full name and where you're from, just so when we're talking in the conversation, people can see who each other is without having to introduce yourselves again. For those that missed my introduction, we're going to just sort of try and make this a conversation. When we've got 4 sections that we're roughly giving 15 minutes each. So Bob will set each one up with some sort of example things we might talk about during that section, and then I'll try and sort of moderate a bit and cut us off if we sort of run over too long. But I'll try and let the conversation flow if we're at a good point in it. But yeah, so rather than using a hands up mechanism, just let's try and just sort of interject a natural pause in the conversation as you would if we were all in the room together. So that's why it's important that we've all got screen names and I've got our video turned on so we can all see each other. All right, cool. Bob, I'll hand over to you. Introduce yourself first and off you go.
Hey, Bill, nice to see everybody. Thanks for the invite, Robin. So yeah, Bob Campbell, for those who don't know me, I started riding up in North Yorkshire where I used to live, and then disappeared for quite a few years in the military, and then ended up working by a whole host of different things at Coed Llandeglo when that opened, with Jim and Ian up there. So I helped out with the maintenance and work up there, and then got a job at Forest Commission Wales, managing the mountain bike trails in South Wales. So I was running Afan Forest Park, Cwmcarn, liaison officer for Bike Park Wales, and I've been managing contracts and doing digs and stuff for the past 20 odd years or so. Also an active member of the Avon Trail Volunteers and one of the supervisors with Rob. Rob comes along to a lot of the dig days with us, and also work as a trainer, which we'll talk about in a little bit, with my partner Ali. Unfortunately, Ali can't be here. We have had a real kind of family emergency, nothing to stage, but she's dealing with that at the moment. So I'm going to fly solo on this one, no big deal. So I've got a bit of a presentation. The presentation is just going to really, it's not there for all the detail. It's just to kind of start you thinking about things and maybe bring up some topics you might not have thought about. And then we've got some slides with some questions on where we'll just open discussion really. If you've got questions on things that I'm presenting, just kind of save it for the open bit at the end. Each section, as Robin said, we've got 4 sections. Each bit's got a kind of discussion bit at the end, and jump in there with any thoughts or questions that you've got from your group's perspective, or just questions in general, really. So I'll start sharing, as long as Robin's allowed me to. And hopefully that'll work. Give us a shout when that's working, Robin. Come through?
Hasn't started to work yet.
All right. Hang on. We've been practicing all day, and it isn't like technology to not work when you actually want it to.
And it still doesn't work.
Hang on a second, don't wait.
Yeah, normally it says starting screen sharing, but it
Yeah,
hasn't done that. Yeah.
There you go.
Well, look, while you're doing, there you go, it started.
There you go. Go on in. Join in now. So yeah, John Main's training workshop. Just with our open discussion. It was supposed to be me and Ali, but just me. We're both Association of 12-wheeler tutors, so we train according to their kind of criteria, and we'll talk a little bit more about dirt as we go through the program. Rough layout of what we're going to do. Have a little look about the history of trail kind of maintenance training in the UK, just so you've got a bit of background, understand a little bit. Some of you have been around it for a while. A bit of a discussion about working with landowners and what that looks like, or what that might look like. I would like to talk about competency, because that's really relevant to training, but also a lot of you there's a lot of competency on the call with no formal training. So how do we demonstrate that? What does that look like? Planning dig days, thinking about before dig days and what you do during dig days, just quick kind of stuff on that. And then assessing your training needs, which I think is really important for groups to kind of have a bit of a plan about what is it, where are they now, bit of a journey, where are they now, where do they want to get to, what's their individual needs. And we'll go through a few questions on that as well. So a little bit about mountain bike management training, that's what we call it, managing maintenance operations and the delivery of that sort of training. So originally when the trail centres opened in kind of mid 90s, Forestry Commission did a lot of internal training with their own learning and development team. So they had their own staff trained internally. And then they outsourced that to what was then the CTC, Cycle Touring Club, which is now Cycling UK. They, at some point, when they turned into Cycling UK, actually decided to not do off-road training in terms of trail management stuff. And so the tutors that were delivering that kind of broke away and started doing it themselves. So me and Ali at Campbell Coaching, Clive at MTB Skills, Ian at Firecrest. Jed, SingletrAction did kind of internal training anyway, I thought. I mean, maybe not externally. Feel free to correct me, but I'm sure there was some kind of training done internally there at SingletrAction as well. And Richard at B1K has been doing that stuff as well. No, I don't want to. The first three there, so us at Campbell Coaching, Ian and Clive have kind of worked together, although Clive kind of owns ATB, the Association of Trail Builders, to try and just be consistent. We're all delivering the same stuff, but try and do it in a slightly more consistent way under a kind of umbrella of the Association of Trail Builders, which is grander than it sounds. It is just us three working together. We are about to kind of connect with some of the commercial trail builders in the UK, but there's other stuff going on that I'll cover in a minute that'll explain why that hasn't happened. Interestingly, if you work with any of the three forestry bodies, so Forest and Land Scotland, Natural Resources Wales in Wales, and Forestry England, ATB is also a member of FISA, Forest Industry Safety Accord. So within the forest industry, and all our mountain bike work is umbrellaed underneath the forestry world. There's a working group that looks at safety. So if you want an emergency plan or something that your land manager, if they're a forestry representative, understands, if you just use the FISA template, that's their day in, day out stuff. They see that stuff every day. So the moment you start saying, oh, we're going to use some of the FISA templates, or we've had training that's in accordance with the FISA regs, then you're kind of winning that conversation right from day one, hopefully. Forestry England are still doing internal training, and a couple of you said there you're about to go on courses with someone they've got on contract delivering their courses. So they've got their own stuff that they've developed, which is based on that older stuff as well, but is fairly up to date. And obviously, Dim Bins are doing training up in Scotland. A few, Bobby, you were doing that coming up. That's really good. We know those guys really well, and the tutors up there quite well. And obviously, the commercial bike parks and trail builders have been doing their own in-house training for their own staff in terms of building and maintenance type stuff. Although, having said that, if I'm honest, we've probably trained most of the larger commercial bike parks. So, Bike Park Wales, Revolution, Anterstinog. We've trained and qualified all those guys, and Dan had put Dovey Bike Park as well. Interestingly, some of you will have heard or seen the Dirt Project. So we weren't involved at the start because Dim Bins were the kind of lead partner. Napier University was the lead partner. but we have been, both me and Ali and Ian have been on dirt tutor training courses. And there's two parts to dirt, just to make this kind of clear to you. And dirt's an IMBA program, European-wide, to bring in accredited educational points and certification for trail building and maintenance as well, but primarily around trail building. There's two parts to it. Dirt 1.0, which is finished now, is basically resources. So if you Google dirt training resources, you'll end up on their website. You just need a password to get in, and that's so they can monitor how many people are using it. But you get a password, you go in, you can see loads of really good practice. It's not the standards, but just good practice about how should you build jumps, how do you manage, water management, and a few other topics as well. Dirt 2.0 is what they're working on now. And that's not due to release until 2026 at the earliest. And that will be training and certification. So it'll be European-wide and acknowledged. So say you pass the trail building course in the UK, you'll be able to go and work anywhere in Europe under that qualification as a trail builder. That's all getting thrashed out now. We're involved with part of that discussion. So you can see it's a really kind of dynamic situation. There's a lot gone on in the past. It's not new, trail building training, but it's changed a lot. And the focus potentially going forwards is that we align with kind of the stuff that Dimbins are doing and the ATB stuff. And so ideally we have one pathway that we're using. Forest England might still do something separate, or they might come on board with that program. It's all very fluid at the moment. Just a bit of an overview, really. Working with landowners then, so just a couple of topics to kind of fuel your brains, really. I mean, obviously the key thing is agreeing what you can and can't do. So is that day-to-day reactive or proactive trail maintenance? So, the reactive stuff is normally there's some sort of inspection program, and most of the time the inspection program says that the trail's okay, but it might pick up some things that need fixing. Proactive stuff is you're going to go out and fix stuff before it becomes a big problem and you've got to rebuild the whole trail section. You might have bigger maintenance projects like resurfacing whole sections of old trail. It's quite interesting in when discussions we're having within the dirt kind of world. They're all building trails. Most of our trails have been around for 20 years, so they're old now. They just need looking after. There are new trail builds going on, but actually the bulk of I can't remember how many thousand kilometres it is of trails. Definitely within Wales, we've got about 550 kilometres of official trail network. All that stuff's 20 years old now, and it all needs lots of maintenance and looking after. So there might be larger projects where you might be planning multiple dig days. Again, new builds, so you might be building new sections or maybe new complete trails. What we call a trail now has changed. Not that many years ago, it was a 15-kilometre loop, whereas now it might be just multiple sections that you link up with forest roads or whatever. And definitely now, thinking about what else the group can put back either to the local community or for nature benefits, so making habitat piles, biodiversity ponds, clearing paths as well as the trails. That can be quite useful for the local community as well. So there's other things that can lead you into that discussion with your landowner that might have multiple benefits for other people as well as the group. And then obviously the key thing, Robin kind of touched on it there, is what training is acceptable to your landowner. Ultimately, the two people that are going to dictate what training you have is the landowner and your insurance company. They're the people that need to be won over about what you want. So that's kind of key that goes on. And you will find right now there are regional variations. We mentioned the kind of Surrey Hills and the ATB issue there. I think the Surrey Hills staff, forestry staff, won't recognise any training, irrespective of who's provided it. However, Forestry Commission England will. So that's all getting thrashed out now. There is a lot of discussions going on. I'm not involved with it from a Wales perspective, but within the three large forestry landowners about having a kind of common standard, and that should go forwards now with the kind of wherever we end up with the courses going forwards. So that's the stuff that kind of working with your landowner. I mean, there's lots more, but those from a maintenance perspective, that's really important. You've got their permission to come on their land and maintain the trails, whether you're managing them or whether you're doing it under a stewardship kind of agreement where it's their trail, but you're helping them look after it. And that will come with things like mineral rights. Can you dig holes and get material out the ground or not? and kind of building all that stuff together. So to kind of start that discussion there, you know, again, most of these sites will have longer term plans. So, you know, Forestry England will have 5-year plans for sites. We'll do the same in Wales, and Scotland will have the same idea. That's for forestry sites, but your landowner, whether it's a local, it is interesting. We're getting more of this trail management work through local authorities now than the traditional forestry, because that's where the new growth is in community managed sites on local authority land. There's a lot of that going on. You need to understand what their vision is for the site and how mountain biking fits into that, and what that longer term vision is. In a forestry context, what you need to know is, are you going to come cut all the trees down in the next 5 years? Because that's going to have a big impact on your trails and how you manage them and maintain them. And then there might be partnerships with other organisations that might want to come on. So, you know, either commercial companies that want to pay their staff to come out and have a team building day out doing stuff. There might be commercial companies that want to come in and get involved with supporting you because they see the benefits of cycling in its widest forms. But there's all sorts of linking partnerships that might be available there as well, with partnership with the main landowner. Discussion points then. So we're really interested to listen to you guys. There's a nice number of people on the calls of what sort of things are you doing? Is it day-to-day maintenance stuff like maybe you guys are doing at Burlish Bike Park? What sort of planning you do for those as well? Is it kind of just off the cuff? Do you just kind of go and do it? Or is it more kind of scheduled out planning? What do you think are agreed quality measures? So how do we know we've had a successful dig? You know, what's the key measures that give us that quality at the end of it? And also, how do you kind of that long-term planning things? Do you work with your landowner or the local authority on that longer term stuff? So that's kind of just some start things really for the discussions. Enough of me. Anyone want to kind of chip in? I mean, I guess because I know some of you, I'll just pick on you just to start the conversation. So Hannah, I mean, you know, we've done the training with you guys. I'm guessing you're still going out and doing your inspections and stuff. How are you planning those maintenance sessions? Are they just kind of doing it themselves, or are you overseeing it from a central point?
So we have a communal spreadsheet on Google Drive. So I inspect the trails every month, have like a colour code system or like a grade 1 to 3 system over what's essential and what can wait. And then the trail fairies, Kieran and Felix, go in and make the magic happen.
Yeah, no, brilliant. And it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that, does it? It works. Yeah, get it inspected, pick up some things that need fixing, and then keep it going. Anyone else got any experience of doing that? I mean, yeah, Singletraction guys, you've been around doing this stuff for a long, long time. So what does that process look like in your world?
Well, yeah, I mean, it varies from site to site depending on how much is involved with the landowner. So, for instance, at Stainburn, because it's out and it sticks a bit, basically I do that. So I walk the trails. Generally, I go out the week before a dig day because we have them scheduled once a month, first Sunday of the month there. And I'll wander around, look at what's what, decide what we're going to do. And it's usually, yeah, if the weather's crap, we'll do this. If the weather's good, we'll do that. If I've got 5 people, I'll do this. If I get 12 people, I can add that and that. So I have a plan in my head going forward of things that I want to do there. At Dolby, because that's a Forest Commission site where they have staff, then the guys there, they have their list of priorities that they want doing, so we'll work to that. So at the moment, we're working this last weekend. That's the 3rd Sunday of the month, by the way. We did Section 5, which was built by a contractor. The first bit of it was built probably 4 or 5 years ago, and it's unfortunately, it's on pretty bad ground. It's very sandstone and very soft, so we have to keep reworking it. So that's what we're doing there. And then we'll also do the occasional midweek dig days there to pick off smaller projects, which again are usually picked out by Will, who's the rec ranger there. At Weatherby at the moment, we've just got a local guy who came in and wants his BMX track reinstating, which he used to ride in the 90s. So we've been sort of I suppose we'd call it consultancy on that one. So they just came and said, we he came and said, "What can I do?" So we've been pointing him at all the appropriate people from Leeds City Council, Wetherby Council, and then to be honest, he's a really good guy. He's very driven, and he's been then getting all the donations in, and then we spent last Thursday and Friday on site with the contractors he'd got, providing, I suppose, the bike experience as to clearing the site, drainage and things like that. We're about halfway through that, and we're waiting for the next round to see organises more material. And such as you mentioned, somebody's mentioned Richmond Bike Park. I've been in touch with Louise there as well, being up for a site visit, giving her advice. She emails me, I email her back, sort of all sorts of bits and pieces. So it just depends how it comes to me, really.
Cool.
Jez, I saw you getting chips delivered to you at Wetherby on video this weekend.
Sorry, chips?
Yeah. Didn't you do like an ad for the local chip shop or something?
Yeah. Danny is the guy it's called Danny Fingers Roberts. But he seems to know everybody in Wetherby. So he knows the local tool hire place. So we got a dumper, 3-ton dumper, 3-ton digger. He's got a mate who's got a 5-ton digger. He knows the local muck shift man. So he just rocked up with 10 tons of aggregate and dropped it and said, I had despair of a job today. And then he goes, I've got fish and chips organised for lunch on Friday. And I said, are you going to pick the fish and chips up? He said, oh, no, they're delivering it.
Brilliant.
So it makes life very easy, does Danny, but how he knows these people, God only knows.
Bob, just before we continue, could you turn off screen sharing so just in case the video, when it's recorded, is only recording the slide and none of our faces?
Right, okay, yeah, cool. I'll do that while you carry on talking.
Well, anyone else want to chip in? Remember the screen while it's still up, everyone. Andy, maybe do you want to have a go?
Oh, it's interesting. We don't do the trail inspections formally. So from the sort of liability side, that's all the rangers doing that. We do our own sort of untrained, very informal ones, just to see what we would like to be doing. And then because we're on FE land, we do the prioritization is sort of is a joint collaboration. So FE will come with a list of things. We'll often have stuff that is like top priority because there's an issue in one of the trails that's causing concerns. So that would get bumped up the list. But otherwise, we've got otherwise we work on the sort of collaborative way in terms of deciding what to do next, which sections need looking at, that sort of thing.
Cool. David,
Bob, there should just be a red button to say stop sharing at the bottom.
No, because I'm in presenting mode. I'll have to come out and present. I can do that.
Okay.
Right. There you go. I can do. There you go.
There you go. Awesome. Yeah. I mean, it might have been fine, but we'll never know until I start editing the video after the call. And if it was just people seeing that slide and none of our faces, it wouldn't be great to watch. Cool. Anyone else want to go? Keith, do you want to give some of your experience of what happens at Hammersley?
Yeah, like I said, I've only been there for about 18 months, but it's very similar to kind of what Andy was saying and what Jez was saying about Dalby and how it's prioritised by Forestry Commission or Forestry England and the Rec Ranger at Hammersley, and we kind of work on that. But I know that both Alex and James, in their capacity as kind of club chairman and kind of trail building overseer, talk quite a lot about where they want to go, and actually, I think different parts of the forest have different appeal. So actually, we know kind of red trails, the heavily used ones, things like the skills loop need a lot more attention than maybe some of the the trails that we kind of leave to just become naturally more technical, where there's not an actual what would you call it? A risk of the trail actually collapsing. So that's quite a key thing that they have to consider. I'm really interested from a kind of definitely from what Andy was saying about FOD, and what Hannah's experience is around the Burlish, because obviously Richmond Bike Park is it's not built yet, and we only put the planning permission in on Friday to use the site. So it's kind of a maintenance regime or strategy is something that will be really new, and we won't really know how much maintenance it'll take until we actually build the thing. But I'm really interested from Hannah and others' experience where it's kind of a bike park site. So I see Tony ride Northampton. You're on the call, and I presume that's Northampton Bike Park rather than something else. Kind of how the design can influence the amount of maintenance, because we don't have a club that's going to maintain it. It is purely volunteers. It's not, we haven't even really, corralled the effort. There's certainly a groundswell of people who, want to be part of the build, but being part of the build is quite exciting. Being part of the maintenance might be the challenge. So
I'll just put in just before Tony, and I can see Tony waiting to speak, but I'll just put in because some of the new peri-urban sites, Northampton's a really good example. Newbold Common's another one where they're really close to urban. There's some really good lessons learned come out of that from a design and build perspective. So I can talk about, effectively what you're going to have is a site that's ridden 12 hours a day, every day, no matter what the weather. So in a traditional kind of jump site, people would go, "Oh, don't ride that. You're going to knacker it because it's been raining for 3 days."
Yeah.
Makes no difference on those sites. The kids still turn up and they're still going to ride it. And so how you build it initially is really going to be influenced by that knowledge and learning from those sites that it's going to get constantly ridden. Whereas sites out in the woods, a little bit more remote, the locals are like, "Oh, don't ride that because it's been raining for 3 days. Leave it alone." And I'm sure Hannah's got exactly the same problem as well. Tony, you pick up from Northampton.
Yeah, I think that's you're dead right. It gets ridden all the time, regardless. Just recently with the frost, because we've got a limestone surface. The frost has lifted it. It's melted, and then people have ridden through it. So we've got a really bad situation. The trails themselves haven't suffered too much, because you can't get the speed up to ride down them. But we have a multi-user path that runs all the way through, connects the town with an industrial estate, and people have continued to ride through that, and it's rutted to death. Hopefully, it's soft enough and it'll get packed back down again as people ride through it. But we'd need a heavy roller to go through and flatten it off at the moment. Lessons learned point of view. Drainage. We found we were on. It's an old golf course. It had been landscaped, so there was topsoil on top of really heavy blue clay, and we think water was running between the topsoil and the clay, and bursting out through the backs of berms that hadn't been built. So where we dug a berm into the hillside. So we had to dig trenches at the backs of the berms to take the water away to stop it doing it, get into the clay underneath. And some of those ditches are 5-6 foot deep because the berms are cut in properly. And we lost the whole berm. The water got behind it, hydraulic the whole surface off. which On Track had to come back and rebuild. Not their fault, nobody, so we couldn't foresee it. And we do get springs popping up here and there, so we've had to dig down underneath into the clay, put pipes and rocks and all sorts of things in just to drain one boggy patch.
Yeah, I think building on old golf courses is definitely going to be an art going forwards, because the drainage has been artificially managed and taken the wrong way because they've got a hole there or whatever anyway. So the whole site's so yeah, definitely a lot of lessons learned coming out of all those projects.
I'm just going to move us on. I'm just going to move us on a bit. I mean, not going to call this to a halt because we've got more to cover, but we're 14 minutes in. So I suppose, I mean, Tony, while you're talking, I mean, what sort of long-term planning do you do? So not a planning for an individual dig, but, you know, planning for a year. You know, how do you approach that? Or don't you? Do you just do it dig by dig?
We just go in on an ad hoc basis. So we have two trained trail inspectors, but we don't do the trail inspections ourselves. That's done by Northamptonshire Sport. And we get reports back of what they want working on. That tends to revolve around the courses that they're going to be running. So any kids coaching courses. So it's normally, can you fix the skills area? Because Ian's coming in to do a load of sessions with various age groups in the summer holiday, in the school holidays. For a rider's point of view, we want to be getting rid of brake bumps. We want to be getting rid of the boggy holes that are still appearing, and resurfacing where the trail surface has been taken off and gone down to the clay. So we try and do everything we're asked to do, but there is a little bit of conflict there between what needs doing from an overall perspective and what needs doing from a bike park operations point of view. We don't get involved in the grass cutting. That's covered by the bike park officers. Well, officer now, because one of them's retired fully just recently. So we're not sure how that's going to operate going forward, whether they're going to replace him or not.
Okay,
but,
cool. Well, look, just because we are short of time, I'm going to move us on. Andy, coming at it from, you know, because I know you guys do a lot of long-term planning, just to sort of as a contrast. Do you want to tell us a bit about
that? Yeah, I suppose we were in a very reactive position. We did have, so we had 3 miners, which was like 3 different trails, probably about 30 kilometers of boggy, pretty hard to maintain trail. I think we did some sums, and it was going to take us 6 years just to update that trail and get back to the beginning and start again, because like the trail would, you know, after 6 years we'd probably have to go straight back in. So I think that's when we started to really look at going to FE and going, this is no one wants to do that. No volunteer wants to just continue to be working on maintenance for that long. So we wanted a way out of it, and we did go back with a much bigger plan that sort of had we're sort of about a year into probably a 2 or 3 year plan, which has just helped get the volunteers back to sort of motivation, where we're cutting out a lot of bits of trail. We're working on sections that we're bringing up to this kind of standard that we want, and that will be sustainable enough. So it's not always about, in that case, we were actually getting rid of trail to make it manageable for the group.
Cool. Anyone else? Anyone doing any sort of any other sort of long-term planning, or any long-term planning on their trails?
Yeah, I've been doing some with Will at Dolby, so we've been looking at things, new bits of trail. So we have spec. The main thing, of course, is getting the final thereafter. But we have identified an extra 600 metres of blue trail to finish the end of the blue, and remove it from the walking trail, which it currently ends on. and also an area for some additional skills areas. Again, because the skills area they've got there at the moment is tiny, and it's not really, it's very, very minimal. So we've identified an area up near Dixon Solomon for that. But it's going to take a long time, a very long time to sort out, just because there's no real money in the kitty. You have to go for grant funding to get that sort of thing ahead, plan well ahead. We are looking at things like that. I'm always looking at things like that myself.
Cool. And Martin, any experience from Bristol you can share?
Yeah, personally, I'm not involved too much in the grand plans, but I know that the trustees are quite democratic and ask for input from lots of people and come up with like a plan for the year. And usually it involves one or two big projects where we'll get contractors in to rebuild a whole section of trail, and then we use volunteers to kind of finish the project off. And then a number of single day digs where we'll get volunteers in to, touch up bits of trail, over a particular section like we were doing the other weekend. So that's generally how it happens over the course of a year.
Cool. And then David, what are you? I mean, you're obviously just relatively new to it, but have you started to do any long-term planning, or you?
Yeah, we've got quite a few plans that we're trying to formulate. Currently, it's just red and black trails up there in the quarry, but I think some of them need regrading because they were built possibly 10, 12 years ago, and I don't think they'd stand up to the grading of bike parks today. They'd probably be downgraded, I would think.
So they're sort of blues and reds rather than reds and blacks.
There's no blues. There's just red and black. So the main red trail is just a big loop, an XC loop, but it does have some nice berm bits in it and things like that. The black trails are not downhill. I wouldn't say they're downhill, but again, they're just. It needs a bike park feel down the bottom where we've got some space to attract more riders. That's my feeling on the place. Just recently, we've had a group of trail builders turn up, secret trail builders, and they've adjusted some of the jumps on part of the trail on the lower section, and it's created more interest in that small section than possibly in the last 8-10 years. So it's what people want. So we need to try and convince the Lancashire County Council to change direction and pump some money in, because the place has never had anything done to it in the last, since it was built, basically. Because it's a council-built place, there was never any maintenance plan put in place. They just built them and left them. And that's the situation we find ourselves in. So as far as dig days, we're just a bit random, really. If something needs doing, we'll do it. When I started doing it, it was shocking. The place was, you couldn't ride 6 feet without drowning yourself in a puddle, or, even worse. So we've fixed all that now on the red route. We're just getting all the trails properly assessed by Dirt Factory from Oldham, I think it is. But yeah, we're working with a lot of different people that matter, to try and improve the place, really, and get people coming up it. We also have an issue where we have no uplift system, and the place where you start at the car park at the bottom, it's a grind. It's going up into an old quarry, and it's an absolute, you've busted a lung by the time you get to the start of the red route. So everything's kind of not in place, really. And people just want to session different areas these days. They want a clip of Instagram, doing the jumps or doing the berms or things like that. They're not interested in doing a big XC loop. So it needs to change. It needs to have some money spent on it and develop and bring it up into into this century, really.
Cool. So you mentioned Dirt Factory. Are they inspecting it, or are they grading the trails? Are they going to regrade the trails different?
Well, I've asked them to come and have a look at these. The section. We've had a bit of controversy. These people that have come in and built these jumps, they built 2 shark fins, gap jumps on an existing red trail. They just appeared. So obviously they weren't very happy about that, and they put some like tombstone kickers on some of the original jumps and this sort of thing. So obviously Lancashire County Council have spotted them and they weren't very happy. But I want to keep them as best I can and do what I can to keep them. So to try and appease the situation, I've asked Dirt Factory to come in and check out the new section. We've tried to get a section where you can bypass the shark fins, and also the shark fins now, from a safety point of view, I've got a contractor in and we've filled the gap. So it's now progressive and they can roll. You can still do the jump if you want to do, but you're not going to kill yourself if you fall into the gap. It's all sorted out. But it's the most exciting thing. You've got kids going up there now and just sessioning it, and adults the same. Whereas before, the biggest thing we have up there, the major thing we have is motorbikes. So it's an improvement, shall I say.
Are you able to talk to the guys doing their work?
I've actually got them on board. Yeah. I've got them on board because I see them as an asset going forward. And there's 3 groups that I know of locally that are good at trail building. Unofficial trails, but they're good at what they do. They've been doing it a long time. And if I can harness that and use it, then I'd be so happy to get them involved, which one of the groups is involved now, but I've just got to rein them in, because if they do too much without getting any authority from Lancashire, there's going to be an end to it.
This might be a good segue to competency, Robin.
Well, I was going to say a segue to I just want to cover a couple more points before we move on, which is what are the agreed quality measures. Bob, do you want to just explain a bit about what you meant, like really briefly, what you meant with that bullet point?
Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned it there, quite a bit. So there's the ride quality stuff, but generally what you're talking about is keeping a trail within grade. And David was just on about it there, kind of getting things graded or changed. The grading system within the UK has changed a little bit, but it was developed by Forestry Commission. There's 2 grading systems. You've got your private site grading system for bike parks, and then you've got the kind of all UK forestry type grading system. And it doesn't really matter which one you use or you make your own. What's important is the first time visitor to your site we can demonstrate very clearly that they made a choice to ride that trail. So you set out, these are the trails, there's some green ones, there's some blue ones, there's a red one, there's a black one, and here's a double black one. We suggest you start off at the small one and work your way up, because that's what this site's like. This is the easiest trail on this site. And so what we're doing is if there is an incident and an accident and an inquiry or a claim or whatever, we can demonstrate very quickly that we did give you all this information, so it was your choice to go and ride it. Yeah. And that's kind of what we're talking about. And then there's also the kind, that's the formal stuff. But then if you're running a site that relies on car park income or whatever, if it's not fun to ride, nobody's going to come, so you have no business. And I use it because I know it really well. But Bike Park Wales, if their trails aren't kept spick and span and in good condition, nobody goes. So they invest a lot of money in doing that. So you need to look at where the income stream is or where the user numbers are. Dave, in York, and the local economy is gaining out of those riders. So there is an impact to the local authority. They might not see direct car park income, although they do on that site. But there might be a wider benefit to the local economy because having the trails in good condition, so people want to go and ride there, like you've just said.
Yeah, the economic department, the problem we have, the local council is Rosendale Council, but the site owner is Lancashire Council. That's what we have. So we've got 2 conflicting. We're in Rosendale Borough,
Yeah.
But yet Lancashire on the site. And I can't say enough about Lancashire, to be fair. They've been really helpful. They've supported us, and they still do now. And they're on board with bringing it up to date, because it never had a trail centre when it was first built, and it should have had. So that's a killer for a start off. There's nowhere for people to go or clean the bikes or anything. But we're hoping to plan that in. We've got a park nearby that has its own cafe that stands on its own 2 legs, and there's a vacant building which we could possibly turn into a trail centre. We've got a local bike shop that's interested in doing that. So
my first job at Llandegla was taking £500 a day out of the bike wash machines every weekend.
Yeah, it's just simple things, isn't it?
Just to move things on a bit, Andy, before we move on to the next section, can you, because I know I'm picking on Andy because I know that Dean volunteers do this. Can you just talk a bit like a bit about your cycling master plan, and then we'll move on afterwards.
So so I suppose forestry have, as Bob said, forestry have their own master plan for the whole site, which involves all the forestry side of things. They then, in our case, they've then got a plan for the cafe and the things, bits and pieces there. But there is then a separate sort of trail master plan, and that's the one that we work on with the Rangers in terms of what the 5-year, what we're hoping to achieve in the next 5 years, and that just helps everybody when you're even when you're building a trail, you can always refer back to that master plan and say, well, the idea is we're trying to make this, so in case of the red was a blue, we're trying to build more and more red features into it to make it a worthwhile red, to keep it interesting. We did do a lot of regrading and things like that, and that was all helped by the master plan, because when you put all the trails together, it makes, you start looking at it and going, well, we've got a load of blacks, we've got a load of reds, we haven't got that many blues. Is that right? And then you start asking questions, and we downgraded quite a lot of stuff to blue, because it was pretty obvious it wasn't that hard. And now we've got a load of blacks that are probably double blacks on the signage, but they're not double blacks. But the plan is to make them to build in those bigger shooters and wooden features.
From our
Andy,
point of view,
I have a question.
Oh, go on.
Yeah.
Out of all the car parking charges from FOD, given that generally Saturday and Sunday you can't park in there if you're not in there before 10 o'clock, how much is that goes towards DTV, and how much is generated through your own fundraising activities?
So we don't get any. The trails get money. Obviously, the way it sort of works, it all goes into a big pot. So there's a number of. So you've got the car parks, you've got the cafe, you've got the coaches, you've got YouTubers who pay a fee to do their filming there. So there's all these sort of different funding that comes in. Forestry then spend a lot of money on developing their own trails, which are outside of DTV. So the greens and the blues, they tend to put their money into.
Bob's was theirs, was it? Did they fund that completely?
That was DEFRA. DEFRA funded it. We didn't. We had very little to do with that at all. We tend to sort of stick in the red, black area just because it's where our volunteers are more interested, and greens and blues are all machine built. It's just we don't want to be spending.
And that's Forestry England's cycling. They have a long-term cycling strategy, and that is to develop more greens and blues, so to feed more people in, because their geography allows for that. In Wales, we don't have many greens and blues because we have 300-meter valleys that we have to climb out of. So it's really hard to put green trails in. So the right things in the right place. And I think that's one of the things to think about, is not every site can have everything. If you can have everything on a site, that's amazing, but geography just doesn't dictate that. You can't always have everything everywhere. But raising that funding model is key. If you haven't got a long-term strategy, no one's going to give you £100,000 to build new trails. So you need that long-term strategy, really. With it's hard when you've got two landowners, like you're saying, Dave, review with 2 different local authorities. And quite often all that car park money just disappears into a black hole and you never really see it come back on the trails. That's a real shame, but it is something that does happen occasionally.
Yeah, well, unfortunately we don't have the infrastructure for a car park or the charging, so we are in the process now of starting to become a CIC. We were a friends of group with a bank account, and we have had some local funds from businesses, but it's small amounts of money plus some money from Lancashire as well, which we've been very grateful for. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like the bigger funding that would fund a new trail or anything like that. So we're hoping that if we get into the CIC status, we'll be able to unlock more funding. Plus, we're hoping that green. Well, I don't think we'll get a green up there, but possibly more blues will be more inclusive.
Yeah,
and it might encourage more people to go up there.
And I think you're more likely to get that funding. From what I've seen, like the DEFRA funding is more about accessibility and inclusivity. So it's very easy for greens. It's fairly straightforward for blues, but you probably wouldn't get it as you go up, as you notch up.
Yeah,
but
it's just a case of trying to get some funding and get it moving up there. There's plenty of prospects for things up there.
It's a shame the industry is in such a state, because we did find things like skills parks and jump features and things like that do play really well with a lot of the brands, because especially if you've got a big jump line that's being sponsored by Canyon or someone like that. But
there's no money anywhere.
Just going back to your point about trying to harness your local builders and keep them interested, and the fact that you've got these trails which are currently graded black and red, but really are blues and reds. There's something there. Based on Andy's experience of you've got an excuse to go to the council and say we need to put more features in to keep them in grade. We've got permission to have these trails here that should be reds and blacks and are currently not. We need to put more features in.
Yeah.
Anyway, look, I'm gonna hand back over to Bob to start the next section off.
Yeah, cool. I'll just stop sharing. Give me a shout when that's come up.
Yeah, we see your screen. We're not in presentation view, but we can see your screen.
Yeah, there we go. Cool.
There you go. Cool.
So let's we touched on it there. Let's just put a bit of a framework around competency and talk about that, because we're talking about training and kind of qualifications and stuff. So again, going back to kind of links in with ATB and what we do, because we're members of FISA, we're putting competency in a FISA in a forestry context. You can go down loads of rabbit holes with this. There's all sorts of different discussions about what does competency look like. What I'm going to deliver to you now is what forestry believes competency looks like. So I accept there's other ways of doing this, but this is what the 3 major landowners and trail owners will kind of expect to see. So the skills, hard and soft skills. So a hard skill will be, can you use a mattock safely? And then the soft skills might be, can you teach your group something when you're out? Or can you control your group and keep it fun and exciting for them so that your volunteers come back? So there's kind of skills that are in there. Next part is knowledge. So that knowledge bit would be, yes, you know how to use the mattock safely, but do you know how to dig a drain? And do you know the wider impact of that drainage and how that works? And then there's experience about, so how many times you've been out and done that. Now that experience might be doing the same job a lot on the same site. So if you're a dig leader, you've done lots of sessions on the same site, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Or you might you've worked on 10 different sites across the UK on all different types of terrain and soils and materials. Then that's a huge amount of experience. So that competency is kind of built off how we look at those 3 elements. So, how can you demonstrate your skills, knowledge, and experience? It's like writing a CV. Imagine you were writing a CV for a trail building job or trail management job. Just imagine listing that stuff. That's what it would look like. And then actual competence, there's some kind of defined stuff within FISA about competence. So we've got basic, proficient, and experience. So, someone who's, in terms of a trail maintenance world, someone who's got a basic level of competency, I will probably have to supervise. So that means they'll probably stay within my eyesight. I'll be able to see them at all times when they're carrying out work. Someone who's proficient, I might be able to say, you 2 guys, can you go down there and clean out all the drainage? And I know they're going to be able to do that. Once you're at the experience end, they've got lots of experience of doing this. then that might even be someone in my group that I send the person who's never turned up. This is their first dig. I might actually send them off and go, can you show them how to clean out the drainage, or can you help deberm that section, or can you help repack that berm, whatever it is. So you've got different levels of within that competency. That's a real, a quick kind of shoot through it, but all that stuff's kind of fairly relevant. And if you start talking in that language and thinking about how you can demonstrate without doing any training and having a certificate, you've all got some competency on the call. It's like, how would you design something to show that off in the best way? Having a qualification is good because it encompasses all that stuff as well. And quite often landowners will say, right, you've got to be trained, you've got to have some sort of qualification that's been trained and assessed. But you could say, right, we're on a journey. It's going to take us a couple of years to get there because we need to raise some money, we need to organise some courses, we need to get the right people involved. We can't do that overnight. So what will you accept now? Will you accept now that we as a group have been working on this site for a long time and we can demonstrate we're competent at doing it? So that's kind of where that's coming from. So the discussion points here is what training do you think you need? Is it those skills, hard and soft skills? So is it about, you've got lots of people that haven't been on tools. You might have only ever used a Matic. There's a whole range of different tools, depending on what site you're working on, what's the best tool for that? Or is it some of those softer skills in terms of group management and group dynamics and dealing with all that kind of stuff? Is it the knowledge stuff about, so what does good drainage look like across a site? If you're building a new bike park in Richmond, drainage is going to be your number one enemy. And so getting it right on day one is going to be really important, because if you get it wrong, your maintenance is going to be a nightmare ongoing. And then the next question is, what do you think the best delivery methods would be? This is really important for me as a trainer, because we're in a world, both in mountain biking and externally, where we're turning into blended learning. So would you be okay with doing 3 hours of online learning before you came on a one-day course? What's your views around that? And then also, how, from a personal level, how do you think you could demonstrate that competency that you already have? So you've got a level of competency, you might want to develop it better, but how would you demonstrate to someone now what your competency is? There's different methods of doing that. Some of you may have already done it in your normal day-to-day jobs and work lives. So that's it from there. I'll stop sharing, Robin, as per your request. There we go.
Cheers, Bob. Cool. So what training do people feel that they need? Anyone?
Well, we've done the ATB course, the basic one. And even though I was disappointed in it, and that's no disrespect to you, I wanted something more practical. But the council paid for it, which was good. Like I said, they've helped us out a lot. A lot of the other group who don't dig found the health and safety side of it very interesting. But I can now go from that course after watching the small session of what tools and placing them at the side of the trail correctly and digging drains correctly. I did get something from it, so it's not a complete loss for me. And I can now transfer that to other people that come and volunteer. I can show them the correct way of doing. So it hasn't been a complete failure. I don't want you to think that, but I just would have liked more practical for me, because I'm hands-on.
Yeah, no, fine. No, point taken. And that course, it's been discussed internally as well. So it's not gone unheard. So don't worry about
that. Roddy, what about you guys up in Ochil? If he's indeed still there.
Yes, I am indeed still there. Sorry, I was just looking in the background. Yeah, so all going all right. Yeah, looking forward to the course. What to say? So I guess there's two sort of things that, like, talking about the peri-urban locations. That's kind of that's that's really us. There's a lot of trail building happens, and we're kind of looking to have that competency, being able to demonstrate that by having the qualification, getting our insurance, first aid as well. And then kind of another strand is the skills area, which is kind of currently going through planning at the moment, which is very much kind of really within a village essentially. So yeah.
Roddy, I mean, I suppose that this is it's a good point to ask you, right? Like, you haven't done the course yet. Like, what would you want out of that course?
So we're in touch with the guys at Dimbins, and they're kind of asking us kind of what we're looking for, and I suppose it's it's kind of it's a bit of everything. I don't there's kind of on the Dimbins website there's kind of an outline of what the course covers, and I think it's it covers a lot of the practical stuff, a lot of sort of planning trails, schedules of work, working with landowners as well, which we've been doing quite a bit of in terms of kind of joining the local access forums, stuff like that. So it's kind of we're quite a diverse area. So I think for instance the needs of the skills park will be very much kind of just it's quite accessible. It'll be kind of organising dig days and so on. And then the other kind of existing trails roundabout, it'll be trying to get a bit of legitimacy and being able to be stewards of those trails. So kind of lots of different things really. We've got quite a diverse patch.
Okay, cool, thank you. Kieran at Burlish. I mean, you guys seem to be getting on with it, and I presume you don't feel like you need any training, or is that too big a presumption?
Well, I guess no. Yeah, we sort of just get on with it. I don't know. Obviously not had any training, so I don't know what the training really entails or teaches you. There's certain.
Is there anything is there any gaps in your knowledge? You're like, oh, shit, I wish I knew how to do that, or that area of trail isn't draining properly. I wish I knew how to do better drainage, or I'm just guessing here, but do you know what I mean? Is there anything like that?
There is. So we've got. There's one part of the park now where there is a takeoff, and the riders who can't yet do that takeoff are shooting off to the side, and they've shot off to the side so much. I would like them to shoot off to the other side, so they're going off onto the right, that takes them straight across the next trail. Whereas if they went off to the left, it would be much safer. But because they're all shooting off to the right, that now looks almost like a trail itself. So things like, how do I make them shoot off to the left without standing there going, go that way? How do I build something to encourage that? Ideally, I'd like them to be able to do the jump, but obviously if they can't do that jump, then they're going to have to pull off. But they need to pull off. I want them to pull off to the left and not the right. So things like that is what I need to be able to learn.
Okay, and obviously you said you've worked in sort of construction type stuff already, but what about sort of materials and stuff like that? Is that all you're just using local materials, there's nothing to learn there type thing, or?
Yeah, so we've got a local firm who basically give us all our aggregate. The land itself is sandy. It's quite easy to work with, and then the top is the aggregate from this local firm who just donate it all for us.
And that works okay.
And it works really well.
All right, cool. Martin, what about you? Anything that you feel that you'd like to know how to do or know more about?
Yeah, well, I think there are probably two areas where Ride Bristol could benefit. One is, and it's probably different audiences. One area is some of the things that you covered in the little session the other week in Bristol, to make sure we've got all the bases covered from a safety point of view. So I think we thought we had it all covered, but you certainly raised a few things that I don't think we're doing quite right. And then I think the other area that other people would be interested in is some of the technical side of building fun trails. because I don't think we always get that right. Sometimes, even when we've got contractors in doing the build, it still doesn't always seem to turn out as well as it could do. So that's something else I think that we could improve on with a bit of training.
Yeah, it's hard. Cool. It's really interesting building trails because it's such a dynamic world. You know, think you build it and within 3 weeks it's changed again, or the ride line has changed, and you can have all the plans you want. The moment you start digging the ground, it normally changes because there's a big rock there that you can't move, or there's something else, and so it's a really weird industry. Unlike if you're going to build a building, you go in and follow the drawings, and that's where you get at the end of it. And that's not how trail building is. It's really dynamic, and that can change with, you know, the weather conditions, the soil types, whatever. But yeah, the design element's really quite hard to get it right. And most trail designers would agree that no trail's perfect. There's always bits of it you go, oh, it would have been better if we'd have done that afterwards.
So unless anyone else has got any like sort of points to make about what training they think they want. No, good.
I can.
Go on then, Jez, go on.
Yeah, it's from a point of view, I think part of the problem is sometimes that we've got guys who just want to come and dig. So they don't really want training. So I have to try and, you know, train as we go, pull them along. And then the other problem with training is generally people got jobs. So trying to get people together, particularly midweek, is a real problem. But then the other half is then, oh, well, I'm busy at the weekend because I've got families and stuff like that. So timing is everything. But I would say most people really just want to be practical. So, you know, doing the online stuff, people struggle with it. Yeah, that's just my personal opinion. You know, just talking to guys that we have come along.
We can't train them in any way, basically, you're saying, because they're too busy.
I just think it's things you have to take into. I mean, we tend to do it on site while we're there and try and keep them going that way, rather than doing the real formal stuff. Because, you know, if they've got a lot of them are coming, this is their hobby, this is their fun time. So if you make it too formal, they don't want to know.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. You've got to keep it fun, haven't you? And you know, most groups that, you know, there are some groups that need that kind of basic level of kind of look at how we look after trails, but actually it's the supervision that's important, and that skill that you've got, Jez, of taking them out and keeping them entertained. You know, giving a certificate over that. And then the thing that is a little bit different between Scotland and the rest of the UK is the inspection process. So we do a separate, you know, 1 day inspection course, and Dimbins aren't doing that. And I'm not saying that's wrong. It's just a different way of doing it in Scotland. But I think that's a really good way of kind of just having all your bases covered should anything go wrong. Because quite often on the inspection, you don't pick anything up, but that's still really good evidence. I also act as an expert witness in court for the defence, I would say. And having that evidence that we go out and check it and it's okay, and every now and then we pick up some stuff we want to fix, that's really important. And those two processes are slightly separate. Sorry to butt in, Robin.
Yeah,
no. It's like, yeah. I mean, Jez has segued us really nicely onto the next point, which is, you know, what are other people's opinions about the best way of receiving training? Obviously, that could be a formal training course. It could be an online training course. It could be videos that you watch. It could be all sorts of different things, and it could be any combination of those things. Anyone else other than Jez got an opinion on that?
I'll go, Robin. I think trying to strike a healthy balance between the practical and the paperwork side of it, and doing the course with Bob and Ali was really helpful for me to have that competency to go to local authorities and other landowners and say, I've got this certificate that says I can put paperwork together to cover your back if we're doing something on your land. In a nutshell, I know it's a lot more complicated than that, Bob, but I think that's basically it. But as Jez said, some of the guys just that's not their thing. They've not come up through industry or the side of industry that I came up through, where it was all necessary to have those accreditations in place, and they don't get it in the best possible way, they don't see the need for it. It's and it's trying to get that across.
I mean, to be clear, obviously the different sorts of, the different groups you could train, right? You could,
definitely, yeah.
The volunteers doing the actual digging, they don't, they might need a bit of tool handling, a talk at the beginning of the session, some basic safety training, but beyond that, they may not need any more training. But obviously there's the people, leading those sessions that might need training. There's the people planning those sessions that might need training. There's people that are running the group that might need training. There's all sorts of different potential recipients of that training. It doesn't have to be every single volunteer at all.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Anyone? Go on, Hannah, waving your hand.
Yeah. So I hear the fallout from digging rather than actually being a digger, but I wondered whether there's any scope for something along the lines of you watch a video and then you do a little multiple choice quiz and then you can say, oh, I know the answers because I've watched this video, and you get the answers right. But stuff like how not to waste your energy on digging that's going to get you in trouble, like how to spot a badger set, how to check whether it's SS Island or whatever. The stuff that I get contacted by people's parents who think they've taken them to a sanctioned trail, and then they have an interaction with a walker, and then they're like, oh, well, hang on, this is all completely unsanctioned, and they thought they were taking their kids to a good place, and now they want to get into like, well, what is right, and how could I channel my child's energy and that kind of thing. And at the moment I don't really have anywhere to send them if there isn't a local group that I know covers that spot. And being able to kind of channel people into a fairly informal, low cost, probably free resource that gave you a little bit of like insight into, there's more to it than just a spade, might be a good way to then get people into doing the stuff that you guys are doing that's sanctioned and trying to do it properly.
Yeah, I think we've got one chance with our volunteers for them to watch that kind of video. It's sort of on their first dig. They're still excited. They're coming along. They don't know what to expect. And I think we could get them watching a video at that point.
I was thinking something that was online. My husband does lots of continuing and legal education stuff, and you sit and you watch a video, and then there's some kind of clever questionnaire at the end of it, so that you can't just copy and paste the answers.
Yeah, no, and that environmental awareness, Hannah, is really important now, because that's what's scaring a lot of the landowners, because they're just seeing trails spread, and we all know there's an impact to that. It might not be as severe as some people claim, but there is an impact. And so, like you're saying, how do you find out if it's, there isn't a sign in the ground saying this is a triple SI or there's a protected bird nesting over there. None of that stuff's there, but that's the reason why things get bulldozed initially. How you make that fun and engaging for those kids or teens or young people to go and look at and still keep that. It's totally doable, but there's a mechanism there that needs looking at and seeing how we do it. Even from a professional contractor-led thing, those restrictions are incredibly flexible. It's really hard to kind of, there's 100 different links you've got to go and look at scheduled run birds and plants that are protected, and you can't do that now because there's dormice, and trying to condense that is going to be quite hard, but I think it's something that we should have a go at for sure.
Well, I mean, on that particular point, there is a very good resource on the Trail Hub about how to find out if your trails are on protected land, Bob. With very detailed instructions that I spent days writing, to be honest.
Except I can't see it because I'm not in the Trail Hub.
No, you can send neither is Bob, because he works for RW. Anyway, but that's just an example. There's plenty of stuff that isn't on the Trail Hub.
There's two slightly different things. You're right in what you're saying, Hannah, but with these, kind of for the sanctioned trails, I think the important bit is the people who are supervising the others, because, whether you like it or not, you do have some sort of legal obligation to keeping those people safe and the users of the trail as well. So there's a need for some sort of to demonstrate some sort of competency, whether you're self-assessing it or getting someone else to assess you and kind of go, yeah, I know you've done all those sessions, or having a formal course where you've got a certificate. that you can waive at your local authority, like you were saying, Tony. I think it was.
Right. Anyone else got any opinions about how training could best be delivered? What would work for you? What wouldn't work?
So something that hasn't been mentioned.
Sorry, go on, Andy.
Something that hasn't been mentioned is train the trainer. I think for a group, as you know, we're a fairly large group now. We could probably start thinking, rather than sending 7 or 8 people on a 2-day course, we could send 1 or 2 who would then come back and help give that training out on our side. So
and that's something we've always wanted to build into, like the trail maintenance coordinator course. But you know, like we were discussing earlier on, you know, that's a 2-day course we cram into 1 day because people can't take 2 days.
Yeah.
But I think there is another course there about once you're that supervisor, and it's a personality thing. You know, not everyone's able to stand in front of a group and teach them something, and that's okay. But some of those supervisors will have that ability. And so how do you pick out those individuals that become the DTV training manager that deliver the toolbox or talks on their sessions? Yeah, I think that's a real missing gap at the moment that we should think about.
Yeah, and maybe it's not, and it's also about training them to train incrementally, as Jez said. You know, like it's not necessarily about delivering formal training courses at, you know, in one block. Yeah. You know, it's about training them over the course of the year's dig days, incrementally, bit by bit, so they don't know they're receiving training, isn't it? Potentially. Yeah.
Totally.
All right, cool. Well, let's move on to the next section, Bob, because we're running behind.
No, it's fine. Well, not fine, but that's where we're at. So having a look at what that kind of planning looks like. So, you know, planning a dig day and having a bigger plan for it. And I'm not going to go into loads of detail about the whole thing, but here's a quick kind of snapshot of the key stuff. You know, you need to have an aim. Is it trail repairs? Are you just fixing the trail? Whether that's from a formal inspection or you going out last week and just having a look at your site and going, oh, we need to fix these little bits. Or is it that blend that Andy's just said? Is it that we're going to fix some trails, but we're also going to do some skills? We're going to upskill our group on something or teach them something new this session. And I think that's got to, if we do that in a right way, I think that's a good way of keeping the very hands-on people that don't want formal training, keeping them involved about, right, we're going to show you something different on Wednesday's session and give them an excuse to come or the excuse to go, I've got to go because we're having a training session. There's a blend there. So what your aim is, you've got to recce the site. I think anyone who delivers this stuff, you've got to know your site. If you know it inside out, that's great. If you haven't been there for a few weeks, you've got to go and look at it and kind of work in your head, you know, that aim you've set out, is that actually achievable given the scale and the pace of the work? Because you never know how fast you're going to get through the work until everyone gets out of the car in the morning. And if you've got the 4 hands-on people there that normally just smash this stuff out, you might get that kilometre done. If the 4 people that turn up are completely new and never been to your session before, the pace is going to be a lot slower because you're going to do a lot of, you know, introductory work, a lot of tool, you know, demonstrating how to use tools, working them through that. So you might not do that. And then just the sheer location, you know, I live in Afan. It can take us 40 minutes to drive to some of our trail sections. So people have only got a set amount of time they can volunteer. If we spend 2 hours driving to the site and back again, it's just not viable. We're just not going to get much done. And so most of the volunteer session stuff is pretty close to the trail centres. It's on those sections that are close in, and NRW have to send the contractors out to the wider stuff because it's just not viable for the volunteers to do that. And then you've got to look at the stuff, and I'm going to wrap in everything into that. You know, what staff do you need? How many supervisors do you need, or people who are going to control the group? What tools do you need? Do you need other materials? Do you need screws and bits of wood because you're fixing something? Do you need minerals? Do you need soil or materials? Where's that coming from, and how are you going to get that? I put in brackets there, supervisors to volunteer ratios. And I don't think any of us that do the training set any kind, there's no, you know, if there's 1 supervisor, you can have 6 people out there because it's really dynamic to the top point about what the aim is. It's totally applicable for me to go out and supervise 20 people doing a litter pick. It's not, you know, I couldn't supervise 20 people building jumps. That's just not viable. So I think we need to leave that fairly flexible to fit in with what your aim is. But I think there should always be, there's 2 members of staff that are key. There's always someone who's in charge of the group as a supervisor, and there's always a first aider. How can you not have a first aider with a group? So that they're the two key roles. You might combine those, but I generally would advise not to, because when there's something going on, somebody needs to give some first aid, and then the supervisor needs to stand back and go, right, what's happening now? How do we get everyone away from here? Do we just get the casualty out and we carry on with the work? How serious is it? There's too much going on for the supervisor to now be trying to bandage someone's arm up and reassure them that they've just got a broken arm or whatever it is that's happened. And I'll just add the caveat in, for the 20 years I've been doing trail maintenance, I'm going to touch my wooden table. I've never treated a volunteer for an injury. I have treated loads of people on the trail that have ran down the trail to us and gone, my mate's just crashed up there. Can you come and sort him? Well, you can't say no. And I'm sure, Andy, you must get this loads. You know, you just get other people coming to you because you're wearing high-vis jackets and someone's a first aider. And so you just end up dealing with someone else's problem. It's generally not the volunteers that you're dealing with. Once you've done all that stuff, you need to go through the normal logistics stuff. What do you need? Where do you need it? And when does it need to get there? Your timings. How long is it going to take us to travel to site? Are we walking or are we driving? Whose vehicles are we taking? All that kind of stuff. And then there's the paperwork stuff that none of us like doing. And you know, there's different ways of delivering this, but there needs to be a risk assessment in place. You might need to have an emergency plan. You might need a dig plan, and in the construction world, that's called a method statement or a construction phase plan, but we'll call it a dig plan because we're mountain bikers and we need a cooler name than that. You need to think about welfare. If you haven't got access to toilets, then you're just not going to have many females come. We know that. I've seen that. So we have to make that work to be fully inclusive and make it work for everybody. You've got to think about, so where's the nearest toilet? How are we going to get people to the toilet and back again? And then there needs to be some sort of site safety brief. You know, if anyone's been in construction, you go onto a site, you get inducted on it. Even if you're there for a day as a visitor, you get a site safety briefing. We need to give all those people a briefing and demonstrate and let them know that these are the rules on this site. And if you've got people that turn up every week, if it's the same people, that'll take seconds to do. If you've got newer people, that might take a little bit longer. And then on the day, all that planning has to give the dig supervisor enough freedom to be really dynamic. And what I mean by that is the people who turn up, the weather, what's going on, other people on site. If you're working in a really urban site, trying to close a piece of trail to work on is an absolute nightmare, especially on a Saturday morning. So the planning needs to give you enough structure that you can run your session safely and satisfy all your legal requirements, but also give you enough freedom to be dynamic on the day and maybe have a couple of, you might walk a section of trail and think, this is actually what I want to achieve, but if I don't have the right resources on the day, we're going to go and do this on this other bit of trail. And I think having those kind of several options in your pocket is really, really key as any sort of supervisor, dig leader. And then things to kind of discussion points here. So really think about, you know, how do you currently plan your sessions? What does that look like? You know, what training or support would you need to help you do that more efficiently? And we put in there, like, is it blank templates? Is it checklists? Is it forms that we could provide you that would help? And again, I've gone back to it because it's just as important here, is what do you think those delivery mechanisms look like to give you those skills? So these are, you know, as the group manager and as the planner, it doesn't always have to be the same person. That, you know, quite often on the trail maintenance courses, people go, oh my God, do I have to do all this? And I go, no, you don't have to do it, but you're responsible to making sure it's in place. You don't have to write the risk assessment, but you need to know it and see it and feed into it. And so all that stuff has to be there. And the supervisor's role is really to kind of know where it is and know that it's been done. In some places, it will be the supervisor that does it all, but it doesn't have to be that case. So just open that one up, Robin, for discussion. I'll stop sharing.
Who wants to kick off? I didn't take a photo of that one, so I haven't got it in front of me, Bob.
Oh, I'll go through it again. So how do you currently plan your sessions? There you go, first question.
Yeah, go on. Someone talk us through how you currently plan what you do.
Well, I think going up on the hill is the best. I think the ones where we don't go up on the hill beforehand are worse than the ones where we do. And unfortunately, one of my dig leads, his dog unfortunately died quite recently. So he always took the dog up, and he's really missing that excuse to go for a walk and just go and check what's going on, what's available, how much material have you really got left, because you really can't remember how much material you've got left in the heat of the dig.
So it's the recce. The recce is really important.
Recce is really important. Yeah,
you know the trails. I mean, we all know the trails, and you can remember the section. But when you're thinking about it as a dig lead, it looks completely differently. Where we're going to put all the kit, how we're going to get everyone here, what we're going to do when we start fixing that drop. We've got to finish it because we need to open the trail afterwards, and it just puts a totally different spin on what you think you know about the trail.
Jez?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, generally I'll go up the week before. I mean, I always have a plan. I know, I know the site is saying like the back of my hand, like Stainburn. So I'm sitting there, I can walk round it in my head going, oh, last time I remember that needed fixing and this and that and the other. And then somebody will comment about something, I'll have a look at that. But what I generally do is go up the week before, have a walk around the site, earmark several jobs based on the numbers I'm expecting. I'll look at the weather forecast the week before and look what Sunday's going to be like and think, right, it's looking good, we'll be out in the open. It's looking a bit dodgy, so we'll go in the trees and that type of thing. So that's how I do Stainburn. And we do a similar thing at Dalby, to be honest, because everybody rides there. So all the dig crew, 80% of the dig crew ride there, so they'll comment all the time about I rode down section so and so and it's looking a bit dodgy, this and that and the other. The rec ranger's the same. He's looking at things going, it's getting a bit out of grade on this bit, I want to do that. There's a berm that's blown out, I want to try and get that rebuilt. So we'll do that on that sort of all the time, and then we'll have a plan for that particular day. And as you say, the main thing is who turns up, what's the weather like on the day, and then we will adjust the workload accordingly as to who you've got. If you've got the dig monster who can just shovel 5 ton of dirt in a day, then that move that berm, it's going to go back, we're going to dig that out and do that. And if it's just a steady crew, then we'll do a little bit less. But as you say, the main thing is to leave the trail in a safe state at the end of the dig. That's always the aim, always the goal.
Cool. Tony?
Yeah, I think just concur with what Jez said then, but we're probably going to have our first dig session this Saturday. Weather's curtailed us and people being away has curtailed us as well. So probably going to the first dig session of the year this weekend. And so I was out last week looking for holes, and no, it's dried up. It's not too bad, but there are some holes that have appeared in. So I've probably 2 or 3 of those in mind. Attack the first one, the worst one first, and then if we've got time, go on to the second one. But like you say, it's not so much getting onto it; it's finishing it. And if you can't finish that job, don't even start it. We do tend to put the trail closed signs up, barricade, because we've got short, specific trails. We can put the barriers up and close it off. They'll move it as soon as you've gone. As soon as there's no high vis visible, they'll move the barriers and start riding it. But we're starting to learn how to do that and get it open as long as it's not raining, we can open it pretty much straight away because the material goes in nice. If it's raining, that stuff just gets really sticky when you put the whacker plate on.
It's like all the material, I mean, Robin talk a lot about materials, but the golden rule is don't break ground when it's raining. And then when you do break ground, just before you start digging it all up, just check the moisture content, because if you can't compact it and seal the surface again, you're just creating a whole load of trouble you don't need.
Yeah, dig from the top of the pile, not the bottom of the pile.
Something that actually I am obsessed with materials. I do keep going on about it, and actually because you talked about rain, I just mentioned it. I mean, one of the issues that I've seen happen with some of the groups I've talked to is they leave their aggregate out, and all the fine grains get washed away by the rain, and then they're sort of using a really harsh really, really large particle size aggregate for their trails, which creates a surface that all the people riding the trails complain about because they hurt themselves when they fall over on it. It's not a flat, soft, smooth surface. Andy, you mentioned this in the session the other week. I'll paraphrase that you sort of plan a series of digs, and that way you've got more flexibility based on the weather and who turns up. So you've got a plan for different scenarios. Is that fair? Or
yeah, but I think we, unlike Tony and Jez to some degree, we sort of have multi-dig digs. So we will shut a section of trail, as hard as it is. It is hard, but we will shut a section and then work on it over 6 to 12 weeks.
Okay, interesting.
But we have a plan for that whole section, which does help a bit with the amount of paperwork. So you're doing one bit of paperwork for a bigger section, and then we have smaller dig plans each, where you're just picking off a little bit of that you can work on that session.
Okay. Anyone else got anything to add before I ask Bob to remind us of the next discussion point? Go on then, Bob.
What training or support do you think you need to manage those digs better or more efficiently from your perspective? So blank templates, checklists, forms, what would that look like? Apps, I don't know. Open the floor, really.
Risk assessment templates, do you all have one? Or has no one got one currently?
Yeah, we've got all the paperwork. Yeah.
Cool, we'll be nicking all of yours then.
I just nicked them from Clickspeed.
Does anyone feel that they're missing anything that would really help, or not? Is it all fairly that side of things? So this is more about what would support you as planners rather than necessarily the training for the digging itself. Do you see what I mean?
So I think I imagine most people will have all these things. It's always good to look at other people's and have a sort of check. It's sort of going back to check. It's good to have a look at someone else's risk assessment just to go through it and go, yeah, tick, 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 tick. We've got all those bits. Oh, there's an interesting bit we haven't got in ours.
I think there's some really good work, and we've not done it, but there's some good work to do, and kind of, you can write a risk assessment for a mountain bike trail, for working on a mountain bike trail, and that's common to all mountain bike trails. But then you adapt that to your specific site. It might not have steep ground, it might have steep ground. Cross that out, add that in. And then there's the dynamic stuff that we all are very good at doing, because I know we're very good at doing it, because I see all the accidents, and there's not many in terms of maintenance accidents. So I think there's a three-pronged attack there. You can kind of develop this one risk assessment for working on mountain bike trails, and then adapt it to your site, and then obviously reinforce that dynamic stuff that we're all really good at doing, because we're not having those incidents. I do like the checklist stuff, even a planner's checklist, and it sounds really daft, because most of you could do this. If we said organise a session tomorrow, the people who are dig leaders and organising sessions now could do it tomorrow. But could you demonstrate that you went through that process in 2 years when there was a claim? And you would struggle with that. But if you had a checklist that you just ticked the boxes and signed it and dated it and stuck it in a file somewhere, it doesn't matter. You can demonstrate, I went through this process. All the processes we've talked about there, you could demonstrate that really easily.
Just on that point, I've been asked today to keep a little notepad of the times that I'm up in the quarry and walking and just clearing the trails, because it's rocky and it's a quarry. You get large rocks falling onto the trail and various things. And so I just keep up. I'm that guy with a dog. I go up and walk around the place with my dogs. And I've been asked to keep a notepad by the council just to say that we are keeping an eye on the site. It's not abandoned. And if I document it, and they have had some claims, but not from our site, from other sites. They've been in court recently a couple of times for various things. So he just wants us to keep a documentation or a diary of such, just to say that we are looking after the trails and you know, we are keeping an eye on them. There are people up there keeping an eye on the trail for that particular reason. If something comes up in the future and they say, oh, well, they're not maintained or they're not looked after or this, that and the other, well, yeah, they are, because somebody's already up there and taking an interest in it.
And I think
for the whole of Lancashire, we've only got 2 countryside rangers. One of them is office bound and the other one is out and about. So it's not a good situation.
Yeah, they don't have the resources. But and the key thing there is for each of everybody's in a slightly different organisation. It's about standing back and looking at your organisation and going and the legal test is what's reasonable and practical. So what's reasonable and practical for the Forestry Commission in Dalby Forest might be completely different to you, Jez. So a notebook with a date and I went there and it was all fine isn't fantastic, but it's better than nothing. And that's reasonable and practical in a court of law. And so that would be really useful. And I don't want to scare people about going down the kind of legal discussion kind of rabbit hole, but I'd like to give you the confidence that we've got mountain bike trails. We've had them for 30 odd years and there aren't actually many claims coming in. Most of them go away because they know they're not going to win. And so what we're doing, the current good practice is actually really good. It's been through the courts numerous times. We can demonstrate it. And about that reasonable and practical. So what's reasonable and practical for Hannah at Burlish Bike Park might be slightly different to you, but as long as you can demonstrate that, that's the key thing. Sorry to put in, but kind of
that's all right. No, well, actually, what's the next point, or should we move on to the next section?
This
is getting late for everybody now.
Yeah, no, it is getting very late. No, I'm happy to do that.
Can I ask a quick one before we move on?
Yeah.
One thing I think we could do with is a kind of specification for what our trail should be. And I think that'd be useful for us, but also when we use contractors to build the trail, just so we've got the basics all written down. I just wondered if anyone else has got something like that they use, or if anyone's seen any examples that would be appropriate for UK trails.
So in terms of a spec, I mean, that's the key thing, isn't it? If you've got a contract, you know, no disrespect to them, but they want to make as much money as they can, which is doing the least amount of work for charging. And so if you say you want 10 berms, you need to check you've got 10 berms. The quality of that, how much drainage is in there, you need to kind of write out, otherwise they won't build it. There's a lot of good stuff on the dirt stuff. It's not it's not perfect, but there is some good stuff on there. If you went, I want all the culverts to look like this, or I want a berm to look like that, that would be good enough as a spec. Forest England have a really good kind of spec sheet as well. That stuff is out there.
Okay. All right, I'll check those out. Thanks.
Yeah, cool. I will share the last one. So now looking at your training needs, so as a group kind of sitting down and thinking about, so what do you currently have? And what I'm talking about, what competency do you already have in your group? If you've got a civil engineer, you've got like the highest level of ability within any group. They might be volunteering and be willing to put in a couple of hours to help you develop some stuff. You might have people that can write risk assessments day in, day out. Great, get them to do that. You might have people who are builders or who are stonemasons or whatever, and you're in a rocky area. Great, if they're willing to give you a bit of their time. Now, they might not come out on digs. They might help you with the planning stuff. They might help you with the specification, Martin. They might do, you know, I think the biggest thing that's lost is all our groups and all our riding groups are just members of society. Well, there's doctors, lawyers, civil engineers, builders. They might not want to come out and build every weekend, but they might be willing to give you a couple of hours during the week to help you develop some of your planning or your needs. So that's the graphic designers, web designers, they're all out there. Like I say, they might not want to come out and get on the tools like most of the people on the call, but there's a whole load of stuff you might have already in your group. Identify the gaps. So how do you want to fill it? Is it a hard skill, i.e. is it using the tools? Brand new group in the middle of an urban area, haven't done much trail work before because they're just local and these trails have appeared in their site and they want to get involved. So we might need to give them some hard skills about how you carry a mattock down a trail and how you use it. Is it technical knowledge? Like you've just been saying, Martin, I want to write a specification. What does that look like? I point you towards the dirt. It's not the complete answer, but it's a good starting ground. Or is it something else? Is there some other skills you need? How do I deliver really fun and engaging learning sessions to my group so I get people coming through and continuing with the group? So there's a bunch of different stuff that's there. and then develop a plan for that delivery. And I always look at this as a journey. You know, very few of us can wave a magic wand and fix all those questions in the next 2 or 3 months. So there's going to be a long period of time, like you were saying, Dave, about you need to go find some funding, you want to do some other stuff. So there's a laid out, right, we're going to go and seek some funding. That's going to take 4 months. Then we need to get everyone together. That's going to take another 3 or 4 months. Then we need to try and find someone to provide the training, or we might do it in-house because we've got the ability in-house. And then you put that together in a bit of a one-page document about here's our plan for delivering our training needs. And the interesting thing about that stuff is if you have that, and it can be on the back of a fag packet, it doesn't matter. If I end up as an expert witness defending you in court, I can go, they had a plan. They were following the plan. They might not have everyone qualified yet, but they were wanting to get there. And generally, you'll find a judge who will go, well, that makes sense. That's reasonable and practical. That's all you need to do. Now, you can't have a plan and never act on it. That's not going to get you out of jail. But having a plan and going, yeah, we haven't got to where we want to be yet, that's absolutely okay and seen as the norm. And then points for this, you know, again, I'm back to those delivery methods, because this is within the training world, everyone's pushing us towards blended learning. And I'm definitely picking up from Jez and a few of the other people that maybe that we're not going to get everyone doing that. And that might be a little bit harder. But then also take on mind that right now we're trying to cram 2-day courses into 1 day because that's all people can afford. And that's the only time people have got. And so we need to try and find the middle ground. And maybe it's watching some online videos and stuff like you were saying, Hannah. What's the best delivery methods? How are you going to fund that? Different funding models. And how do you develop resilience in a group? And what I mean by that is you go and train a bunch of people and then they have some kids, change jobs, move, and you've lost them. How do you kind of, within different groups, build that resilience? I'll stop sharing. There you go, Robin.
Anyone want to kick that off? Again, I forgot to take the photo.
On the skills side and what's within the group, on our volunteers, we've got a really broad spectrum of people. We've got the graphic designers, we've got people that are good in business, we've got somebody who teaches how to, which we're going to go and see shortly, that does CIC. They teach people how to do the CIC process. We've got everybody. We've got a really, really broad group of people. Like you said, not everybody wants to pick up a shovel and go and dig. But if you have a good background of other people that can help out, it's fantastic. It makes things so much easier. Our local MP, he's on board. He's been talking to a company that is hoping to put in possibly the biggest onshore wind farm right behind our quarry. So that's funding every year. If we can get tapped into that for the next, I think it's 40 years, what they're planning to put it up there for. So we're hoping to like link into all of these kind of things and get stuck into it. And hopefully it'll have a sustainable future.
Cool. Thanks, David. Anyone else? Well, just on the funding front, I mean, you know, David really raised an important point there, which is, you know, working out where your local funding sources are. If you can find, if you're lucky enough to have a project like that in order to get planning permission had to commit to a community fund that they've got to distribute in the local area, however local is defined, you know, that's really good news. Now, obviously that doesn't apply to everyone, but you know, if it does apply, finding that fund and tapping into it is pretty useful. Quite often they find it very hard to distribute their funds because they've got a very set criteria they have to apply.
There is also a possibility of the places to ride funding being another level of that. You know, no announcements whatsoever, but there is. You know, that was all from levelling up funding went to Sport UK and then British Cycling, and that's where Northampton Bike Park came from, and that's where, you know, I can't remember how many, 17 different. Oh no, there's more. In terms of building trails, I think there was like 14 different projects. You know, with millions of pounds of investment. So, you know, none of that's imminent or on the horizon, but I think it's not far off the horizon.
Yeah, although that tends to be for capital spending. I think they're learning slowly that it shouldn't all be for capital spending, but that tends to be for the construction costs of building a new trail, not the maintenance.
You're right.
Or the training costs of training people to do the maintenance. I mean, it should do, but
that's some of the lessons learned from that. Now is that I'm starting to see some other projects, nothing to do with that are coming through with a trailing element bolted onto the construction build cost. So they're going, yeah, you're going to come and build this for us, but there needs to be a legacy after that of a local community looking after it. And they've learned from that first round of kind of building Northampton and New Bog Common, which the two I know really well, but the other sites, and then actually going, oh shit, who's going to look after this now? And so that is starting to come into projects now, which is quite useful, but we'll see where that goes.
Does anyone have any thoughts, either just thoughts generally you had before the call or as a result of the call, about how you're going to go away and think about training for your group?
I like the idea of train the trainer. If we can get someone locally that can get the message across, I guess, because you do get an element of pushback. Well, why do we need to do that, and why do we need to do that from people? All we want to do is dig, and if you can explain coherently why we need all these bits in place, just to for protection of the landowner and protection of ourselves and the organisation. I think it's getting that message across in a way that people understand. People that are reticent to understand, if you like. But just get them to understand why we're having to do the paperwork, I guess.
Yeah, and they could be, at a dig level, they should be fairly protected from that. They shouldn't get too in, but that kind of bureaucracy side and health and safety side shouldn't come any further down than the dig leader. Yes, you need to tell people they are responsible for their own safety and they need to know who the first aider is and all that kind of stuff. But actually, they shouldn't get too involved with all that kind of stuff. It should be upwards from there in the organisation. And I think some of the courses that are missing, and me, Andy, and Robin has spoke about this, is kind of more from the managerial level of the groups that don't come out on the dig days, that just look after it. They need to be aware about the kind of heavier side of it in terms of the bureaucracy and the paperwork and the health and safety at work act and all that other stuff that they need to know they're compliant with. They might not have to do it, but they need to understand their liabilities on that. But I think we need to protect the people on the ground. I think, Dave, you mentioned it. Most people just turn up because they want to get out and get some fresh air and do some digging. They don't want to, oh my God, do we have to do another risk assessment? Just done for work. But I think, there's a certain element they need to be aware of, but we need to protect them, try and protect them a little bit from that, but still make sure that all the stuff's fun and engaging, like you're saying, Tony. We haven't done it yet, but are there, I've been teaching mountain biking for as long as I've been building it, but, games and stuff you can play that we do with kids when we're doing, mountain bike coaching sessions. I haven't thought about it. There must be some stuff we can do that's trail building related as well. Who can build a jump in the fastest time? That'd get them excited. Sorry, I digress. How do you develop resilience was the last question, Robin, and I think that's really important, because there's nothing worse than saving up a load of money and scratching and getting people trained, and then you lose them. So how do you build that lag? I think there is a need, and I'll just start the conversation off, but I think there's a need within groups to kind of go, if we're going to invest this X amount of money to your training, you've got to commit to so many hours or whatever a year. And that's quite hard when you're talking to people, but there's a reality there about you're going to spend money sending people to courses or bringing a trainer to you to run your course. And there needs to be an element of commitment there. Or you just write that off and don't worry about it and go, we expect that to happen. It's not their fault. People are volunteering. They choose to volunteer. And one day they might choose not to volunteer, and that's okay. One of the things we need to, going back to your point, sorry, Dave, you're talking about that notebooky thing about being up there. If you log your hours, if the council are paying a contractor to go up there, there's an hourly rate. So your group is already investing for the local authority, whatever that number is. And then there's also a social value about your own mental health and your physical well-being, that you going up and walking around that site is actually potentially saving the NHS as well. And there's some work going on elsewhere about what's the social value of having volunteers and stuff out. And that'll be really, if you add all those numbers up, we do this many thousand hours a year with volunteers. What would that have cost if the landowner paid a contractor to do it? And then also add the social value on. We're talking hundreds, if not millions of pounds that we're going to have per group.
Yeah, we already have a website that we log our hours onto. So you sometimes can get match funding from the council for the hours that you're putting in, because you are saving them money by doing what you're doing. So yeah, we've already got that in place, and we've already done a lot of hours. But the discussion I had today was the hours where I'm walking and just clearing the trails, I'm not logging them. But he would like me to log them and email them in at the end of each week, really, if I'm up there 2 or 3 times a week. And then he's got a record of what I'm doing, and I'm just keeping an eye on the place. I certainly won't be walking the whole trail every day, but I can put down what section I've walked and is it in the right condition, and just a small note, really, and possible actions, what I might need to do in the future if something's cropping up. Like recently I reported that we had a big sinkhole in the trail. The trail disappeared 6 foot down because there's a lot of original mine workings underneath the quarry, because they dug under for the stone originally rather than on the top. So one of the trails just disappeared overnight, gone. So yeah, we put a diversion in for that, and they much appreciate that somebody's up there just keeping an eye on things.
You guys, just going back to Bob's point about resilience, I suppose it depends how much budget you've got. If the landowner is paying for the training, for example, which is obviously an option, and obviously one you should pursue if it's available to you, because it's not costing you any money. I suppose, or you've got a good source of funding from a local wind farm or power station or rubbish tip or wherever else that community fund comes from, then perhaps you can afford to be a bit more blasé. But if you're having to raise the money and it's quite hard to raise the money yourselves, then you're going to have to be a bit more choosy about who gets to go on a course and how many people you send.
I think that is a good idea of training the trainer, possibly. And then they can roll it out to others, or training a couple of people that are regulars on the dig days, because on my dig days it varies quite a lot. And I've got two different groups, really, of volunteers. I've got the normal trail maintenance group, which I'm sort of running, and then I've got these other guys that did build a bike park in a week if I let them just go at it. They're absolutely relentless. So it's two totally different groups that I've got to look after at the moment.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I'm just off the top of my head. I'm wondering if we could do a series of little mini videos aimed at dig leads that gives them, little things to train people on in 5 minutes as part of a dig. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So they don't necessarily actually need to go on a training course to do it. They could just watch these videos and then use what they learn. They just do a 5-minute section of a dig day where they're training the volunteers on a certain aspect of it or skill.
Yeah, no, totally.
All right, cool. Well, look, anyone else got anything burning they want to get off their chests?
Most local authorities have training funds as well, definitely for things like volunteer first aid and stuff like that. The most local authorities around the UK do have dedicated funds for volunteers as well to access. So don't rule that one out.
Yeah, we've been offered it via the council, but we just couldn't marry it up with the date that we're doing it. It was a group in a different area, and I couldn't marry up with the time. I think another thing for funding for us is these Section 106 agreements with offsetting new housing estates and things like that. That's something else that we're going to start looking into, so we can tap into a little bit of money that way as well.
Yeah, I've got they're called community something funds, aren't they? And the count.
Yeah, it's to offset when they take away green land. They have to offset it somewhere else, and there's money involved in that. So we're going to start trying to get into the council's ribs and see if we can get some of that back. Because currently, I think it's the local like Burlish Pride and things like that. You know, the people that have tapped into it to clean the streets up and make the place look pretty. But there's no reason why it can't be for us as well. So
yeah, totally.
Zoe put in the chat there, Robin. I didn't quite catch it.
Sorry?
Zoe put something in the chat.
Oh, that was about apps.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And more about logging stuff on apps. And I think you actually made the point when we were practicing earlier today, Bob, that Trailforks lets you log stuff. Not just as a normal user, but if you're using it through the sort of, if you're set up as a trail association managing your set of trails on Trailforks, which if anyone wants any help doing that, just give me a shout and I'll introduce you to them. You then get access to different features that you can roll out to your volunteers that allow you to, log, reporting stuff and also logging stuff, the work that you're doing, rather than having to pay for a separate software. But as Tony said in the chat, there is this thing called PSS Plus, which a lot of councils use for reporting issues and stuff like that. All right, cool. It's getting quite late, so I don't want to shut everyone down. So please shout if you've got something you want to say. But in absence of anyone shouting, I will say thank you very much, Bob. That was brilliant. I got a lot out of that, and hopefully everyone else did too. Thank you very much for your time, and we all really appreciate it. Thank you.
No, thank you. It's good. Lots of good feedback from everyone else as well. So good. And if you think of stuff, tomorrow or whatever, then just email Robin or email me, and keep things. There's a few things people have spoke about there. I've gone, I know where to point you. So look, if you don't mind, people, I'll send people emails and stuff if you're all right sharing them.
Yeah. Or share it all with me, and I'll add it to the Trail Hub as well. Share it with Direct.
Cool.
And also, if you want to see the dirt stuff or anything else that's mentioned, the dirt stuff certainly is on the training page on the Trail Hub. Right down, it's buried in a set of links right down at the bottom of the page, but it is there. But if you can't find it, just give me a shout. All right, guys. Thank you so much for everyone for coming, and I'll see you all next month, hopefully.